that the was about handcuffs, choking, putting on dog collars. Do you get those at Petco?
But it just took off.
Yeah.
And everybody was they were just shaking their head. I was like, what? They're like, Shannon, this is gonna go crazy.
Yeah.
The whispers started small, as they always do. A tweet here, a post there. Shannon Sharpe, one of the most recognizable figures in sports media, had seemingly vanished, not just from the cameras, but from public life entirely. No sightings, no statements, no signs of where he might be. And as the silence grew louder, so did the rumors. Was he hiding? Running? Or was he simply biding his time while the storm raged on? Whatever the case, one thing was clear. Shannon's world was crumbling, and the cracks were impossible to ignore.
Alrighty, y'all. So the Shannon Sharpe ESPN, does he still keep his job conversation is beginning to, I was going to say beginning to happen, but it's been happening, but I think now it's beginning to get louder because of different things that Attorney Busby has released, including the audios. So right now the conversation is, why is Shannon Sharpe still able to be...
Let's not sugarcoat it. This wasn't just a bad headline or a fleeting scandal. This was a full-scale implosion. At the heart of it all was Gabriela Zuniga, a woman whose name now echoed across social media and newsrooms alike. Her accusations weren't just shocking, they were explosive. According to her lawsuit, what began as a whirlwind relationship with the charismatic former athlete quickly spiraled into something far darker. The allegations painted a picture of a man who, behind the polished public persona, harbored a side few could have imagined. Emotional manipulation, verbal mistreatment, and recordings shared without consent. These claims alone would have been enough to send shockwaves. But that wasn't all. The lawsuit accused Shannon of crossing lines that no amount of charm or fame could justify.
On Easter Sunday, a lawsuit was filed in state court in Nevada against Hall of Fame tight end Shannon Sharpe because he has become such a massive media star, especially in the past few years. The lawsuit is going to attract.
And then there was the age difference. Gabriela was just 19 when she met Shannon, barely out of high school, just stepping into adulthood. Shannon, on the other hand, was 54, decades older, decades wiser, or so one would hope. The optics alone were damning. A man of his stature and experience pursuing someone so young, it didn't sit right with people, and it wasn't hard to see why. The power dynamics were staggering, the implications chilling. This wasn't just an age gap, it was a chasm, one that spoke to deeper, more troubling patterns. And as more details emerged, public opinion turned sharply against him.
And I don't want to get too far into it, but anyway, it was the person told a lie.
What added fuel to the fire, what made this story impossible to ignore, was the nature of their relationship. Leaked messages revealed a dynamic that was as shocking as it was disturbing. There were references to so-called role play with deeply unsettling racial undertones. The texts were explicit, unfiltered, and impossible to unsee. Gabriela's words, which Shannon himself released in an attempt to defend his actions, only deepened the outrage. Put a big, well, you can fill in the blanks. The language was graphic, fetishistic, and for many utterly sickening. And if that wasn't enough, it raised an uncomfortable question. Who initiated this? Gabriela's critics argued that she was playing along, but others pointed out that her youthful naivety might have made her more susceptible to suggestion. Either way, the public wasn't buying Shannon's attempt to frame this as consensual fun. To them, it was exploitation, plain and simple.
It's a claim against someone alleging that some rights were violated, and in most cases, what's sought is compensation in the form of damages to make up for whatever it is the person did. And there are all sorts of civil lawsuits, car accidents, defamation. We hear about that a lot because people get sued about things that are said about them in media.
And just when you thought the story couldn't get any messier, it did. Because this wasn't Shannon's first brush with controversy. Far from it. Back in his FS1 days, there had been whispers, unconfirmed reports of an incident with a female production assistant. The details were murky, but insiders claim Shannon had been accused of getting physical in a way that went far beyond playful horsing around. Fox settled quietly, and Shannon moved on. Or so he thought. But now, with Gabriela's allegations dominating the headlines, those old rumors were resurfacing. And they painted a picture of a man with a pattern, a man who, time and time again, seemed to find himself at the center of stories like these.
Are now beginning to bring up past things that have happened with Shannon Sharpe, including a temporary restraining order that was filed against him back in 2010 from a woman that he was dealing with at the time, who accused him of sexual assault. He said in different things. Now, this was dropped. It was dismissed, that restraining.
And let's not forget the 2010 scandal when another woman came forward with claims against him. That time it was a former partner, accusing Shannon of behavior that, even in its vaguest descriptions, was deeply unsettling. That case ended quietly, with the restraining order dismissed and Shannon returning to his job. But now, in the wake of Gabriella's lawsuit, those old accusations weren't just being revisited, they were being re-examined through a much harsher lens. And the more people looked, the worse it seemed.
Like the Deshaun Watson cases where there were 20 plus plaintiffs and they weren't really sure who the people were who were making the claims. In this case, Shannon Sharpe knows exactly who it is because there had been, and it's clear from the statement issued by his lawyer, Lanny Davis, there had been some pre-litigation efforts to try to resolve this.
But if there was one thing that truly set this scandal apart, it was the audio. A leaked recording, allegedly of Shannon and Gabriella, had surfaced, and it was damning. In it, Shannon could be heard making threats that many found chilling. "I might choke you in public," he said, his tone casual, almost playful. But there was an edge to it, a darkness that was hard to ignore. "Big guy, choke small woman," he added, as if narrating some twisted scene. For Gabriella, this was evidence of the power imbalance she'd been subjected to. For Shannon, it was another nail in the coffin of his reputation. And yet, even as the walls closed in, Shannon wasn't going quietly. He took to social media, framing himself as the victim of a targeted attack. "This is a shakedown," he wrote, pointing fingers at Gabriella's lawyer, Tony Busby, a man known for taking on high-profile cases against powerful figures. Shannon's supporters, what few remained, echoed his claims, suggesting that this was all a coordinated effort to bring down a successful black man. But that argument held little weight for most. Because how could Shannon play the race card when he'd willingly engaged in the very dynamics he now claimed to be a victim of? It was hypocrisy of the highest order, and the public wasn't having it.
That's how we found out about the lawsuit against Shannon Sharpe. Now, this one has some very strong allegations: sexual assault, sexual battery, assault and battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress. The sexual components obviously give it greater gravity than a car accident or any case based on some sort of negligent slip and fall, something like that, where someone was just being careless.
Still, the accusations kept coming. Another woman from years back stepped forward with her own claims, and though the details were different, the pattern was eerily similar. A relationship that began consensually, only to devolve into something far more sinister. The whispers of manipulation, threats, and coercion grew louder. And with each new revelation, Shannon's defenses crumbled further.
His attorney offered that up publicly.
To me, her turning it down shows that it's not a money grab.
No, it shows that it's a bigger shakedown.
The media, of course, had a field day. Every outlet, from tabloid blogs to mainstream networks, dissected this story, each trying to outdo the other in their coverage. And as the public devoured every new detail, one name kept coming up: Katt Williams. Because as it turned out, Katt had seen this coming. Years earlier, during an interview with Shannon on Club Shay, the comedian had made a comment that now felt eerily prophetic. "You could be the king, and they could take your crown in 2 weekends," he'd warned, referring to the dangers of getting involved with certain types of people. At the time, it had seemed like a joke. Now, it felt like a warning that Shannon had ignored at his own peril.
10 million in a day. And counting, still going up.
But here's the thing. Katt's warning wasn't just about the potential for scandal. It was about a deeper, more insidious truth. A truth that Shannon Sharpe, for all his swagger and charm, seemed unwilling or unable to face. And as the public waited for the next bombshell to drop, one thing was clear. This story was far from over. And yet, as the scandal burned hotter, it was impossible to ignore the shadow of Katt Williams looming over it all. His warning had been dismissed as a passing quip, a comedian riffing for laughs in front of a captive audience. But now it felt less like a joke and more like a prophecy, delivered by someone who had long since mastered the art of seeing through the glitz and glamour to the rot underneath. Katt had been in those rooms, seen those deals, and watched too many powerful men think they were untouchable, only to be yanked down with brutal efficiency. And it wasn't just that he'd warned Shannon, it was how he'd done it. The precision, the timing. Like he already knew what Shannon was playing with, even as Shannon himself laughed it off.
But a lot of the stuff he was saying, because I don't live in that world, people think because, oh, Shannon, you live in Hollywood, you must have heard, you must have been, no, bro.
But let's talk about that interview, because it wasn't just a warning, it was a full-on spectacle. One that's now being dissected frame by frame like it holds the answers to Shannon's undoing. When Katt sat across from Shannon on Club Shay, he wasn't there to mince words. He came with stories, with receipts, with a vibe that said, I've been through this fire and I know exactly how it burns. And when he started talking about the perils of certain relationships, about how fast someone can go from the top of the world to the bottom of the barrel, Shannon's body language said it all. The nervous laughter, the fidgeting, the way his usual bravado seemed to shrink just a little under Katt's gaze. It's all there, clear as day. People are replaying that clip now, over and over, pointing out the cracks in Shannon's cool facade, because maybe, just maybe, he knew Katt wasn't just talking in hypotheticals. And here's the kicker. That interview, the one that's now haunting Shannon like a ghost, wasn't just a viral hit. It was a gold mine. By the time the dust settled, Shannon had reportedly made millions off that single conversation. Ads, sponsorships, downloads. It was a financial windfall that most podcasters could only dream of. And the irony? That interview, the one where Katt practically spelled out Shannon's downfall, is now being used as evidence against him in the court of public opinion. Because if Katt saw it coming, why didn't Shannon? Why didn't he take the warning seriously? Or, here's the darker question. Did he know exactly what he was stepping into and just think he could outsmart the fallout?
You decide whether or not you believe him. Was it tough hearing some of the things that he was saying? Yes, because I have a personal relationship with Earthquake. I've had Steve Harvey on the show.
But if Shannon underestimated anything, it was the public's appetite for a scandal this messy, this layered, this personal. Every day, new revelations are bubbling to the surface and the internet is devouring them like popcorn at a blockbuster movie. And the comments? Brutal. People aren't just calling Shannon out. They're dissecting every choice he's made, every word he's said, every relationship he's had. The narrative has shifted from what happened to how could he let this happen. And for Shannon, a man who built his brand on being larger than life, that's a devastating blow. Because it's not just his actions being questioned. It's his judgment, his character, his very identity. And then there's the media. Oh, they're having a field day. Every headline seems more salacious than the last. Each one digging deeper into Shannon's past, his relationships, his history of controversies that, until now, had been brushed aside or quietly settled. It's like a feeding frenzy, with every outlet racing to uncover the next juicy detail. And at the center of it all is Shannon, a man who once seemed untouchable, now drowning in the weight of his own decisions. The media isn't just reporting on the scandal, they're shaping it, turning Shannon into the poster boy for what happens when hubris meets recklessness.
But people different now.
Yeah.
And people try to make more out of situations than what it is.
But while the media is busy tearing Shannon apart, Katt Williams is being elevated to something of a folk hero. The man who saw it all coming, who tried to warn Shannon, who's now being hailed as the truth teller we didn't know we needed. And Katt? He's leaning into it. He's not gloating, at least not directly. But he's not exactly staying quiet either. In recent appearances, he's dropped hints that there's more to this story, that what we've seen so far is just the tip of the iceberg. And if you know anything about Katt, you know he doesn't bluff. When he says there's more, you believe him. And that's got everyone asking, what else does Katt know? What hasn't he said yet? And when is he going to say it?
Because I got Club Shay,
Right,
and I've
right.
almost got 3 million subs.
Right.
And ever since that Katt Williams, a
Yeah.
lot of mofos been treating your boy different.
What?
Because here's the thing, Katt wasn't just talking about Shannon in that interview, he was talking about an entire system, a culture, an industry that thrives on power dynamics and secrecy. And now, with Shannon's scandal unfolding in real time, it's like Katt's words are being validated in ways even he couldn't have predicted. The power imbalance, the manipulation, the way certain people get away with things until they don't, it's all playing out exactly the way Katt said it would. And that's not just bad news for Shannon, it's bad news for anyone who's ever operated in those same shadows thinking they were safe. But here's where things get really messy. Industry insiders are now whispering that Shannon's case might not be the only one brewing. Several sources have hinted that more individuals, some with even bigger names, are quietly lawyering up, preparing for a potential domino effect. If Gabriella's case gains traction, it could open the floodgates for others to come forward, turning this into a full-blown reckoning. And it's not just about Shannon anymore, it's about the secrets that could unravel if one thread is pulled too hard. People in Shannon's circle, those who've worked closely with him over the years, are reportedly distancing themselves, deleting posts and scrubbing connections. It's the kind of coordinated silence that makes you wonder, what else are they trying to hide?
He didn't want everything to happen immediately.
Absolutely.
Like, it's only Thursday.
It's instant. They want everything to instantly happen. It doesn't work like that.
The righteous people on Reddit, baby, they are dissecting and divulging right now.
And then there's the question of Shannon's role in creating his own downfall. Because as much as people are pointing fingers at the system, at the enablers, and at the industry itself, you can't ignore the fact that Shannon handed over some of the ammunition himself. That Instagram blunder, the one where he accidentally live-streamed a private moment to millions of followers, it wasn't just an embarrassing mistake. It was a glaring example of carelessness, of someone who thought he was untouchable. And it's not just that moment. People are now re-examining his entire online presence, combing through years of posts and comments for clues, for contradictions, for anything that could paint a fuller picture of the man behind the persona. What they're finding isn't pretty. It's a pattern of arrogance, a trail of decisions that in hindsight look less like missteps and more like a ticking time bomb. And let's not forget the audio leak, the one that everyone's talking about. While Shannon's team is scrambling to frame it as a consensual exchange, experts in legal and media circles are pointing out just how damning it really is. This isn't just about what was said, it's about how it was said, the tone, the context, the timing. It all paints a picture that's hard to spin. And the fact that Gabriella's lawyer released it so strategically right when the public was already leaning against Shannon shows just how calculated this battle is. This isn't just a court case, it's a media war. And right now, Shannon's losing on all fronts.
Shannon Sharpe says he's temporarily stepping away from ESPN in the wake of a $50 million lawsuit accusing him of A woman filed suit against Sharpe on Sunday, accusing him of her twice.
And speaking of shadows, let's not forget the lawyer at the center of this storm, Tony Buzbee. This guy isn't just any lawyer. He's a pit bull, the kind of attorney who doesn't just win cases but makes headlines while doing it. He's taken on some of the biggest names in the world, and he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. And now, he's coming for Shannon armed with a case that's as damning as it is sensational. The leaked messages, the audio recordings, the allegations of control and coercion. Buzbee is building a narrative that's as compelling as it is devastating. And if Shannon thinks he can outmaneuver a guy like Buzbee, he's in for a rude awakening. But here's the twist. While Shannon is scrambling to defend himself, while Katt is dropping cryptic hints, while the media is picking apart every detail of this scandal, there's a bigger question hanging in the air. What happens next? Because this isn't just about Shannon anymore. It's about the culture that allowed this to happen, the system that enabled it, the industry that turned a blind eye until it couldn't. And if Shannon falls, who's next? Because make no mistake, this scandal isn't just a Shannon Sharpe story. It's a warning shot, a sign that the rules are changing, that the things people used to get away with are no longer being swept under the rug. So what do you think? Is Shannon getting what he deserves? Or is he just the latest target in a game that's bigger than any one person? And what about Katt Williams? Truth teller, prophet, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story is far from over, and trust us, you're going to want to stick around for what's coming next.